Well, hello again. Greetings. We're not broadcasting from the Monastery of All Saints in Dunedin, British Columbia today, but from the library of Canadian philosopher and theologian David J. Goa in Edmonton, Alberta. I have the privilege of using his library, hopefully not taking any of his books home accidentally. We wanted to talk a little bit about questions that have been raised, and one of the questions that comes up the most often, and it's a question about sex and sexuality and sexual morality. I have been asked by very pious, believing young people, friends of mine who are evangelical Protestants or people who are Orthodox Christians, what actually is wrong with premarital sex? And it occurs to me that we have gone from morality into moralism very often when we discuss sexual morality with young people. And what we've ended up doing is talking in terms of naughty and nice, sinful, unsinful, and we've been giving platitudes and threats and fear and this sort of thing, rather than discussing an actual reason for using control and self-discipline in matters of sexuality. Now, our problem here is that when we do this, we end up giving them nothing. No basis and no foundation for what we're talking about with them. Does God simply have some fetish against humans enjoying sexual relations without any kind of formalities? Or is there a greater reason or purpose? When we speak about the law of God, at least in Orthodox Christian terms, we're not talking about satisfying some kind of fetishes or quirks in God's personality. We're not talking about God rummaging through our lives looking for some reason to send us to hell. The law of God is given to us in order to make our lives more rich, more full, more complete, and safer, so that we avoid suffering many things that we would suffer otherwise. One of the greatest catastrophes that people can fall into is an addiction to sex or sexuality. It can lead to all kinds of brutality, and it even leads very often to murder. Unbridled sex causes the greatest pain and suffering that one can possibly imagine. It can destroy individuals, it can destroy families, it can destroy whole societies. It is so powerful an energy within us that as creative as it can be equally and even more destructive. It can be used as a bond of love and affection to create a family and hold a family together. When husband and wife have a fulfilled love relationship in which the sexual relation itself is an expression of love and unity and bonding together. It can also be so terribly destructive, and when it becomes a passion within us that is out of control, it can cause so much inner pain and suffering, as it very often does in teenagers. So we want to discuss this over one or two other broadcasts, and what we would like to look at is what happens when we have an uncontrolled sexuality, an uncontrolled sex drive within society in itself, when the individual is not in control of his own sexuality or her own sexuality. We know, of course, about venereal diseases, about AIDS, about other diseases that can be passed on through such close contact and random contact with strangers and all of this. We know, of course, that it's safer to have a monogamous relationship with only one person for the whole lifetime. safer from disease and illness. But what about our emotional and psychological well-being? To form a positive bond with one person and form a monogamous relationship that gives us some kind of anchor and stability and meaning to our lives is a part of what the whole concept of family is about. It's a part of what the whole idea of the creation of male and female, so that they form a bond and unity between themselves and so can live a full and whole life. People who don't have that bond and that unity always have a sort of dissonance in their lives, and they always run the risk of this emotional pain and grief and emotional instability. So there's a whole wide world of meaning to sexual control. I'm even afraid to use the word morality sometimes, because it very often has the attitude of repression or crushing or pushing people into a mold of some kind. So I want to use something that might be more meaningful to a younger generation. And what is more meaningful is that God has revealed to us a form and way of life which can lead us toward a fullness of life and can help us to avoid both the internal psychological and emotional pain, which can be excruciating, and all kinds of physical dangers. And we'll continue our discussion, because we're going to have to remember that we have only 7 minutes in which to speak on each one of these broadcasts. But that in base is an outline of what I want to cover in these next few discussions on human gender and human sexuality. So please join us and send your comments along as well.